Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mike Bruesewitz back on the channel. Still coming up with a name, but this is week 4 of our weekly conversations. Mike, welcome back on the show. And what do you want to talk about first?
So a couple things I'm curious of if you've got to see, but Coach Gard came out and he had Big Ten Media Day, as well as he had his first really long-winded press conference with the local Wisconsin media and the local Midwest media I think it was 3 or 4 days ago, and he really talked about his team, the team in depth, what he's seen in practice, what he's seen, going through what he feels like his roster is constructed as and where it's going to be going, where it's going to be successful moving forward. So for me, taking away some of the things that, listening to him, he gave a lot of really big praise to the international guys, specifically Hayden Jones. He talked about how he's a bigger guard coming from New Zealand, as well as Balauskas and Rapp. He talked about those guys, and specifically, he didn't really name them, but he talked about, how they have, high level international experience. They've played in a lot of big games. They've played basically against grown men since they were kids. He was really surprised at their development and how quickly they've moved forward. So I'm kind of curious what you think of bringing some more international flavor to the Badgers. As you view this, how do you think that's going to help this team going forward?
Well, it's always interesting with the international guys. I mean, you look at the NBA and the 2 best players. Well, I would say the 2 most skilled players are Luka and Joker, right? And there is always something to be said about playing older competition when you're young. And I talked about this with Zach Kinziger when he was on the show. Wisconsin kid, but he had an older brother beating up on him, and he felt that was super beneficial for the development of his game, like getting more creative around the hoop. When you have a big brother who's a little bit more athletic and longer than you at the time, sending back your shot, you got to be creative on how to score. And then for these guys who are playing against high-level competition, their games had to evolve really, really quickly. And then, there's just something about overseas and European hoopers who just, it seems like the way they train, and I remember hearing a little bit about this, like a little bit more practice-oriented, where they really get the fundamentals and the intricacies of the game, and that they really develop that feel. Versus in America, it's turned into a really heavy AAU where you're just playing a ton of games. You're not working on those fine details. I mean, for me, I think it's exciting, but at the same time, like, I love rooting for guys from the Midwest, particularly from Wisconsin. So I definitely want, and I'm glad they have 2 freshmen who are from Wisconsin. Just me selfishly, from a fan perspective. Like, if we have just a team full of overseas guys, I probably won't care that much anymore. But we still have that mix of Wisconsin kids as well. So for me, I will still be quite engaged. Mixing in some overseas guys with an elite level skill set. And then the other thing is, like, I don't know how old these guys are exactly, right? They're freshmen, but are they 20 years old, or are they 18? Sometimes these overseas guys come in a little bit older, which in college basketball, I've always thought that age is a huge asset. So I'm excited, and I really think this team is going to be better than I anticipated.
Yeah, and that's kind of the general consensus from a lot of people from media. Obviously, the things go moving forward. The media they're not there every day. They have their opinions. They can say what they want, but when you get it from coaches, Coach Gard is clearly excited about this group. You can tell by the things he's saying, and how he's handling the expectations already. And then speaking of the 2 Wisconsin guys, there's the big man,
Garlock and Kinziger.
Will Garlock and Kinziger. So he actually, Coach Gard, he mentioned both of those guys too, and had high praise for both of them. He said, Garlock is a big kid. He said, vertically, he has a lot of vertical athleticism that, he hasn't had in the past. Stephen Crowell last season, he's a big body, but not overly vertical athletic in terms of, being able to go and be a rim runner and throw over the top and catch lobs. Mm-hmm. And, just from the few comments Coach Gard said, it sounds like Garlock has that ability. And then, he had a lot of praise for Kinziger. Am I saying that correct?
Kinziger. Yeah, I had a tough time saying it at first. I feel like I want to, add in, like, I don't even know, but Kinziger is how you
Kinziger. Okay. Hey, welcome to the club, buddy. I got a hard name to say too, so we're there.
Yeah,
But,
he's got to make some noise and people will know it.
yeah, so Coach Gard talked about him and his ability to be a high level shot maker as well as a creator and just a tough overall kid, which you expect from, Midwest boys who handle those winters like that. Good for you guys.
Yeah, what I will say about him is I was a bit concerned. Had him on and actually I'll say Garlock and Kinziger had both guys on the show. Enjoyed talking to each of them. But I will say with Kinziger, I was a bit concerned that it might take a few years for him to be ready to play at the college level, just because he's a skinnier kid. But he, seeing like the practice videos and stuff, and he looks like he is stronger than I anticipated. He actually might be ready to go right away. Just seeing like how his physique is looking, he's looking stronger than I would have anticipated at this point. So that's something I'm very intrigued about. And then Garlock is that they're talking about his athleticism. You saw it in high school, but he also was on a team that wasn't that good in high school, and he was like really the only guy. So maybe we didn't get to see it as much as we could have if he had better teammates around him. And then he kind of snuck under the radar to Wisconsin. So hopefully he's a diamond in the rough. And then, I think Kinziger will be ready to roll right away. I thought it was going to take a few years, truthfully, but I think he's going to be ready to roll right away. But yeah, what do you think about 6'3", 185 as a two guard? You think that's what he's listed? You think he'll be ready potentially to go right away?
He's still a freshman, so we'll see. And the other thing is he's got a lot of competition in front of him, right? So it like you said, it might take him a year, and even if Coach Gard praises somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to step in and be a starter or get major minutes, because he's got guys ahead of him, Janicki, Blackwell, Boyd. He's got a few guys that are ahead of him. But that being said, it sounds he's a Wisconsin kid. That helps. You Scotties are crazy. You guys like your school, so you guys might, it sounds like he's a guy who could potentially stick around and grow into a role. And I hope that's what happens for him, because when coaches start to praise freshmen early, it may not necessarily translate to minutes, but it translates to, hey, we think we got something here with him. As he develops, and coaches generally speaking can. They can do their best to try and see into the future and be like, hey, he needs to add this and this to his game. But, he has the right mixture, the right makeup. He has the right understanding of the game. And that's a big thing as a freshman, especially coming in. We talked about it with the international guys and how practice changes compared to playing all the time in AAU. And, that's a thing for guys now coming into college basketball is, especially freshmen, they're not getting recruited so much out of high school because they're not a proven product at the college level. And also the college game is so much different than high school. And it's funny, the high school game is actually much closer to the professional game in terms of who your best players are and how they operate than the actual college basketball game now. So for me, it's good to see that. And I'm interested to see what's going on with some of these big bodies. Hopefully Garlock can come in and give them 2-3 rim runs and punish the rim. And then you got, Nolan Winter, who can step out and stretch. And, you got that core group of guys now with, we've talked about them before, Nick Boyd, everybody's, praising him for his speed. Blackwell's looking like a monster. I think he put on some weight this summer, which I don't think he needed it, but looks like he did. And definitely Nolan Winter, he's giving me some real John Lure vibes, 2011 All Big Ten, averaging 18, 19 a game, those type of vibes, which that bodes well for Wisconsin.
So Nolan Winter, I think in a future episode we should talk about kind of make some bold predictions for the season, and I think in the next episode we can talk about who we think the starting lineup will be, because it's pretty set in stone for 3 guys, and then we got to figure out who the other 2 will be. But Boyd, Blackwell, Winter, that's pretty obvious. Those 3 guys are going to be starting, and now it's anyone's guess who else is going to be starting. But I will say Nolan Winter, I will make a bold prediction. First round pick. That's my bold prediction. I think he might be a first round pick. And I don't know if I should be saying this, but I have a little insider information. I was at an event. It was a smaller event where Greg Gard was the speaker, and I asked him about this. And he hasn't said this to the general media, but I'll just say that he is quite excited about Nolan Winter's potential, and he said that when NBA scouts went to our practices, that they were extra excited about Nolan Winter. They were excited about Tanjay and Blackwell, but Nolan Winter was the guy. They're like, this guy has the potential to be legit. And particularly, there's one moment of Nolan Winter where he, against Illinois, he only did this once, but he caught the ball on a kickout, I believe, and he pump faked, and I think he took 2 dribbles in and reversed on the other side. It was on the left wing, reversed on the other side, and it looked so fluid for a 7-footer, and he was surrounded by all Americans last year, and John Tanjay, he had John Blackwell, he had 5 seniors who all have been playing for years for Wisconsin, so they didn't really need him to do that, but if Winter can expand his game where he starts putting the ball on the floor, I'm telling you, this Wisconsin team will be at its best if Nolan Winter is the leading scorer rather than Boyd or Blackwell.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, when you have 3 guys that can really go get it for you, and that's really what it seems like, and you got two at the guard position and 1 at the forward position. And then, you kind of mix and match and see who else can help you. But Nolan Winter is a physical prospect. So I wrote a piece maybe 8 or 10 years ago about just the actual numbers of people who can make it to the NBA. And it's not even like, oh, this is the number of people that actually have made the NBA. It's like, nah, you have to be in a genetic freak pool. It's like you win the genetic lottery. And if you win the genetic lottery, then you have a potential to possibly enter into the NBA, enter into, the number 1 league in the world, the, 400 toughest roster spots to ever get. Nolan Winter is in that, being a 7-footer, he has a much higher possibility. And, the biggest thing, like you said, that shot fake and 2 dribbles into the lane to go and reverse dunk as a 7-footer in the NBA, guess what? That is his job, to take 2 dribbles, knock down shots. That's it. Play defense, move around. And physically, the reason scouts are really excited about him is because he has a really good feel for the game, and just how big he is. That's one of the bigger challenges, and one of the things that, I remember coming from high school to college is just the sheer length and size of guys. You were just like, oh, everybody is 6'10" and has a 7-foot wingspan. And the ability, having to deal with that is a problem. It's hard. It's not something that is easy to deal with. Guys that are shot blockers, 7-footers and guys that are over 7 feet, they have the distinct advantages. They don't need to have great timing because they don't need to jump to be up in the air already. You have to jump to get above them, and they're just kind of like, my arm's already there. It's no problem. So, I think you're definitely on track with Nolan Winter being a 1st-round pick. Now it's, okay, where in the 1st round can he go make that lottery money is really, really the biggest thing for him. And that depends, how his season goes this year and, how he develops. But it sounds like he's put on weight. Physically, he's able to, hold up. And we'll see what happens with him this year. But I'm excited to see what he looks like, too, because also he's a Minnesota kid. And, Minnesota just keeps producing great Badgers. Just a thing that happens.
Winter evolved throughout the season last year where I remember against Marquette, and I was thinking, I was like, I don't know if he's ready for this role yet. Like I wanted him to play less after the Marquette game, and that was in December. He had a rough game against Michigan against their 2 big men when they were just cooking Wisconsin in the pick and roll. And then against Marquette, David Joplin's 6'6" at the tallest. He's listed taller than that, I think. But Joplin, Wisconsin kid, Brookfield Central, like not that athletic, 6'6", a senior, so he's decently strong, but he was having his way with Winter, and I'm like, oh, this won't bode well for the Big Ten. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just, I think maybe a different mindset, mentality, being more aggressive, maybe a little time in the weight room. But Nolan Winter in Big Ten play was super solid defensively. And we kind of saw him grow in front of our eyes. So if he added on some weight, if he can still run the floor the way he did, and if he has to expand his game, he has to be able to put the ball on the deck, in my opinion. To get that next level. If he doesn't put the ball on the deck, then I don't know if he will be that 1st-round pick. But my assumption of him being a potential 1st-round pick is assuming that he will put the ball on the floor more. But so something random that I was thinking about was who would win in one-on-one. I said I think Brad would cook the freshman right now, but John Blackwell's a grown man, and Brad and Blackwell are kind of built somewhat similarly, height and weight-wise. Who do you think right now? Brad was just playing pro. He played a professional game less than a month ago. Who do you think wins more times out of 10 in a game of one-on-one? Brad Davison or John Blackwell? Right now.
So you said, I like how you said John Blackwell is a grown man, and I'm going to have to go ahead and put a parentheses-ish, grown man-ish, because I believe Brad is, 26, 27 now?
Yeah. 26.
Yeah, so Brad had so many years at Wisconsin. I think he was there for 9. I'm not really sure. He was there forever. But then he went and played professionally, and the thing that changes as a professional from a college kid is just the amount of reps you have as a shot maker. And Brad Davison was a tough shot maker in college, and guess what? He didn't get any worse doing it at the professional level. So for me, I'm gonna have to say, pretty easily out of 10 games, I'm going 7-3. Maybe John Blackwell gets 3 off of there just because he shoots the ball super well. But Brad Davison is an actual grown man, and Blackwell is grown man-ish. So we're going to go with that.
I agree. I'm going to take Brad 7 or 8 times out of 10 over Blackwell. But it would be a fun game, fun matchup. But that is all I got. That's all we got. Pardon me. That's all we got for today. Mike, thank you very much for coming back on the channel. And ladies and gentlemen, stick tuned for more content like this, and we'll see you soon.